My twin sister humiliated me in the family group chat. But what she doesn't know is that, without me, she would never have set foot in the college where she studies. While she was the pride of the house, the perfect daughter, the medical student, I was just the personal trainer that nobody took seriously. But this time, the silence I had been carrying was going to turn into truth. She boasts about having a full scholarship earned through merit. Little does she know that I paid every penny by the inferior sister whom she despises. But everything changed the day she humiliated me in front of the whole family. The truth I've been hiding for years, it was revealed, and it shattered the perfect image of the family genius.
The morning sun streamed through the curtains of Renata's room, revealing a simple space, yet one filled with trophies and medals. She took a deep breath before heading out for another day of training, while on the other side of town, Rafaela, her twin sister, woke up to the alarm clock at medical school. Two lives identical in appearance, but distant in everything else. Since childhood, they had heard that Rafaela would be the head and Renata the body of the family. The mirror always reflected physical resemblance, but also the difference in value that others imposed on them. Renata grew up learning not to expect recognition. When she got good grades, people would say, "Rafaela would have done better." When she won medals, her mother smiled, but with the look of someone who saw it as just a pastime. Little by little, she learned to find satisfaction in silence, in the sweat, the effort, and the transformation of the people she trained. Rafaela, on the other hand, lived surrounded by applause. With each academic achievement, the family gathered to celebrate, and Renata's name was rarely mentioned. The pride surrounding Rafaela stemmed not only from her talent, but also from an unbalanced love. Her parents saw in her the promise of social advancement, the daughter who was going to change the family name. Renata, on the other hand, with her work as a personal trainer, was seen as someone who lacked ambition. The contrast became even more painful in subtle comparisons. While one studied an expensive university, the other taught classes in ordinary gyms, hiding her own financial success. That day, Renata looked in the mirror and smiled discreetly. She had just closed a multi-million-dollar contract with an Olympic athlete, but she didn't tell anyone. The habit of hiding victories had become a form of defense. She knew that for her family, nothing that didn't involve a white lab coat would have value. Meanwhile, Rafaela was preparing for another anatomy class, posting stories with the caption, "Tired but happy to follow my dream." The comments from family members were full of hearts and pride. And so the first contrast of the day was complete. One sister sweating for the bodies of others, and the other displaying the intellect that everyone praised. But there was something neither of them knew, a silent connection that kept them linked by more than blood. With each college tuition payment, an anonymous transfer was made by the RR Foundation, created and funded by Renata. And this secret kept out of love would soon become the trigger for pain. How many times has someone you love made you feel invisible? If you believe that even the most wounded love can transform into forgiveness, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. Because here, every story proves that even the most wounded heart can be reborn. The family WhatsApp group was buzzing with excited messages that night. The twins' mother had sent a photo of Rafaela holding a certificate. "Pride of the Ribeiro family, our future doctor." Heart and fireworks emojis multiplied. Renata, on opening the group, saw the flood of compliments and sighed. She typed, "Congratulations, sis," and he remained silent. His comment was unnoticed among dozens of messages praising Rafaela.
Rafaela responded with her usual superior tone, "Thank you, everyone. It was worth every sleepless night studying, wasn't it? Determination is everything." Aunt Vera tried to include Renata in the conversation. "And Renata, how are the training sessions going?" But the comment was quickly ignored, overshadowed by a new video of Rafaela in the lab. The feeling of invisibility weighed on her like an old ghost. Renata locked her phone and went to bed, staring at the ceiling as if holding back tears that no one would see. The next day, during breakfast, the mother casually commented, "Rafaela is going to do an internship at the hospital. The girl never stops. And Renata, well, still with those gym classes, right, daughter?" The condescending tone was cutting. Renata replied with a slight smile, "Yes, Mom, and my classes pay more than many internships." The silence that followed was uncomfortable, but no one dared to question it. Deep down, no one believed her. Meanwhile, Rafaela was recording videos for college, talking about how lucky she was to have gotten a full scholarship. "When you earn it, the universe rewards you," she said proudly in front of the camera. Renata saw the video shared in the group and swallowed hard. It was the first time she felt that the secret, the one that supported her sister's studies, weighed more like a chain than a gesture of love. That night, Renata went out for a run. The sound of her footsteps on the sidewalk mingled with the whirlwind of emotions. Each tap of her sneakers on the ground seemed to repeat a truth she didn't want to admit. She was the invisible foundation of a story that only had one name, her sister's. And yet, she kept running. Running to avoid feeling. Running to avoid exploding. Sunday arrived with the smell of macaroni and lively conversations. The Ribeiro family gathered at the parents' house, as usual. Rafaela arrived dressed in a lab coat, even though she didn't need to, a symbol of the pride she liked to display. Renata, in sportswear, brought desserts and a restrained smile. The glances were the usual ones. A sparkle for Rafaela, distraction for Renata. Inequality seemed to be part of the table's decoration. While they were eating, the father commented, "Rafaela, Dr. Alvaro said you have a bright future. A doctor in the family, huh?" Everyone toasted with soda, except Renata, who observed in silence. She tried to change the subject, but was interrupted when her mother asked, "And you, daughter, are you still teaching at the academy?" The question came with a polite but empty smile. Renata nodded, feigning nonchalance. Rafaela seized the moment and blurted out, "That's right, Mom. Each one has their own calling. Some save lives, others teach how to lift weights." Her light laughter echoed through the room. Some laughed, others pretended not to hear it. Renata remained motionless, gripping her glass tightly, trying to contain the avalanche of memories that phrase evoked, years reduced to less.
Aunt Vera, annoyed, intervened. "Renata helps a lot of people too, you know. There are athletes who only started walking again because of her." Rafaela gave a half smile and replied, "Of course, Aunt, of course. Each one at their own level of complexity, right?" The atmosphere soured completely. Renata got up, claiming she had an early training session the next day, and left before dessert. Nobody tried to stop her. On the way home, the silence in the car was louder than any words. She parked, took a deep breath, and cried for the first time in months. The pain wasn't just from the humiliation, but from the habit of pretending it didn't hurt. On her phone, notifications from the family group chat still vibrated with praise for the future doctor. Renata turned off the device, promising herself she wouldn't respond anymore. That night, while Rafaela posted photos of the dinner with the caption, "Family is everything," Renata looked at her own calloused hands, the same hands that unknowingly supported her sister's future. The contrast between the two realities was cruel. On one side of the city, arrogance. On the other, love that chose silence. Sleep came late. In the darkness of the room, Renata recalled an old scene. She and Rafaela, still children, playing a game of switching places to fool their parents. Back then, they were alike in everything. Even their love seemed divided. But time had transformed that game into something painful. Now, only one of them was visible. The other, erased. Renata closed her eyes and did what she always did, promised herself she wouldn't hold a grudge. But deep down, something had changed. The wound that had previously healed on its own began to throb in a different way, a warning that patience has its limits, even for those who love in silence. And so, Sunday dinner would become the first spark in a story about to explode, one that none of the Ribeiro family could have imagined how much it would reveal. Monday began like any other, with the sound of weights clattering and the rhythm of the treadmills echoing in Renata's studio. There, she was respected. Athletes, business people, and celebrities bowed before the trainer's competence. Her firm posture and determined gaze concealed the emotional turmoil of the previous night. In the gym mirror, she saw the reflection of a strong woman, and yet invisible to those who mattered most. During breaks between classes, Renata reviewed spreadsheets for the RR Foundation. The name was discreet, almost anonymous, but its work was significant. Created 3 years earlier, the foundation sponsored low-income youth in expensive courses. Rafaela had been one of the first beneficiaries without knowing it. The secrecy was absolute. The documentation went through a lawyer and an assistant, and not even her sister suspected that the hand behind the donations was Renata's. While sending reports, a news item on her cell phone caught her attention. Medical student stands out with full merit scholarship. It was Rafaela, smiling on the cover of a local news portal. The article praised her brilliant trajectory and exemplary determination. Renata stared at the screen for long seconds. Pride and pain mingled in a lump in her throat. "You deserve it, sis," she murmured, even though she felt her chest tighten.
In the afternoon, she was training one of her most demanding clients, a triathlon champion, who praised her. "You have the discipline of a soldier, Renata. Have you ever thought about giving motivational speeches?" She smiled, without answering. Success wasn't the problem. The emptiness lay in knowing that the success that mattered most, that of being recognized by her own family, would never come. Being good wasn't enough when you were born alongside the perfect daughter. Back in the office, she reviewed the foundation's payment spreadsheet. Rafaela's college tuition was there, highlighted in green. For a moment, she thought about canceling it. But the memory of her younger sister with the same smiling face asking for help to study together surfaced like a ghost too sweet to erase. And so, she kept everything as it was, out of love again. That night, while taking a shower, Renata looked at herself in the mirror and murmured, "You don't need applause." But deep down, she knew she did, even if only once. The family's recognition wasn't vanity. It was a need accumulated over years of silence, the kind of love that hurts from lack, not from excess. On the other side of town, Rafaela was having dinner with college classmates, telling stories about patience and exams. She laughed loudly, proudly, unaware that each laugh was fueled by the sister she used to tease. The world seemed perfect around her, too perfect even. And while the city slept, fate began to weave the thread that would bind them both in a web of revelations. The invisible woman was about to be seen, but in a way no one expected. The morning began with Rafaela walking across the university campus, her white lab coat contrasting with the proud gleam in her eyes. She loved being recognized. Her classmates called her the Golden Scholarship recipient. Each compliment fed her ego and reinforced her belief that she was there solely on merit. The world seemed to revolve in her favor. She believed she was living proof that effort and intelligence overcome any obstacle. During an interview for the college newspaper, Rafaela was asked about her career path. She smiled naturally and replied, "Everything I've achieved has been through dedication. The full scholarship is recognition of my effort." The reporter enthusiastically took notes, and Rafaela barely noticed how much her words echoed like invisible knives. In the end, the article described her as an example of excellence and determination. The publication circulated quickly, reaching her family group chat. Renata saw the link shared by her mother, accompanied by the caption, "Look at our girl shining." Her heart ached. She sat in her armchair and stared at the article for minutes.
Each line was a mixture of pride and pain. She knew that Rafaela was truly dedicated, but she also knew that without the anonymous financial support, none of this would exist. It was a cruel paradox, supporting those who diminished her.
Later, while coaching a team of swimmers, Renata couldn't concentrate. The voices in the back of her mind whispered what she was trying to deny. Why are you still hiding this? Doubt gnawed at her. The secret that had once seemed like a gesture of love was beginning to weigh like a lie. Maybe she needs to know, she thought for a moment, but the fear of destroying what little bond remained prevailed. Rafaela, on the other hand, was at the peak of her career. She received messages from colleagues asking for advice, teachers praising her performance, and family celebrating her achievements. That night, she posted a photo with the caption, "Nothing comes for free. The universe rewards those who fight." The post received dozens of comments, including one from her mother. "Proud of my doctor." Renata read it, sighed, and turned off her phone. At home, the personal trainer looked at the wall of old photos. There was a picture of the two of them at age 7, smiling in their school uniforms. "I struggle too, sis," she whispered, touching the glass. The irony of being the provider of her sister's success without receiving a thank you was becoming unbearable. Still, something in Renata remained firm. Perhaps faith, perhaps hope. Deep down, she knew that love isn't measured by applause. But that night, seeing Rafaela being praised as a national role model, she realized how much silence can also be a form of suffering. And the weight of that silence was about to become unbearable. Rafaela's world seemed too perfect to last, and Renata's too calm to remain untouched. It was a Friday night when everything changed. The family group chat was buzzing, full of memes and jokes. Rafaela, feeling cheerful after a tiring day, decided to joke. While some study medicine to save lives, others teach people how to lift weights. The phrase came lightly, but loaded with venom. Within seconds, laughter erupted, including from her father. Renata read the message with her heart racing. For a few moments, she thought someone was going to reprimand Rafaela. No one did. Her mother sent a laughing emoji. Her uncle replied, "Everyone has their own talent," and the conversation continued as if nothing had happened. But for Renata, it was as if all the years of effort and love had collapsed at once. She typed something, deleted it. Typed again, deleted it again. Then she simply left the group in silence. On the other side of the screen, Rafaela noticed the comment and laughed. "Oh my gosh, look at that! It even seems like she got offended. Too sensitive." The comment generated more laughter. Aunt Vera, the only sensible voice, replied, "Rafaela, be careful what you say. Sometimes what is a joke to some is pain to others." The reply went unnoticed. The group continued, full of trivial messages, while Renata's heart pounded in an open wound. In her apartment, she paced back and forth. Childhood memories mingled with the group's words. Each laugh echoed like a confirmation she would never be seen, never be recognized. The foundation, the effort, the love, it all seemed to have been in vain. The feeling of uselessness weighed more than any exhausting training. For the first time, she felt genuine anger towards her sister.
Renata opened her laptop and accessed the RR Foundation's files. The donation reports were there, organized and impeccable. One click was all it took to publicly reveal the name behind the grants. She hesitated. Her finger hovered over the mouse. "This isn't how I want to be seen," she thought, her eyes welling up with tears. But resentment had already taken root, and she knew, sooner or later, the truth would come out. Meanwhile, Rafaela continued laughing in her vanity-shielded world. She posted stories about how difficult it is to stay focused when you're under so much pressure, oblivious to the growing emotional chasm between her and her sister. Her arrogance, fueled by praise, completely blinded her. Outside, the rain began to fall.
Renata leaned against the window and let her tears mingle with the raindrops. It was the first time she had cried without trying to hold back. Inside her, something had broken, an invisible but powerful bond. And when that kind of bond breaks, nothing is ever the same again. The drop had fallen, and the glass overflowed. The following days were filled with pure quiet. Renata threw herself into her work, trying to numb the pain with overtime and intense training. With each client she saw, she felt her body respond with strength, but her mind remained weary. Rafaela's words echoed in her head like a cruel refrain. While some saved lives, the phrase repeated itself, corroding any remaining peace. Her silence in the group had turned into absence, and absence, loneliness. In the studio, her colleagues noticed the change. "You seem distracted, Renata," commented one employee. She just smiled, saying everything was fine. But inside, it wasn't. At night, when closing the gym, she would stay alone for a few minutes, staring into space, as if waiting for an answer that wouldn't come. It was the kind of silence that screams, the kind that suffocates because there's nothing left to say. At home, the trophies and certificates seemed to mock her. What's the point of all this, she thought. The truth is, her success never had any witnesses that mattered. Her parents remained enchanted with the family doctor, while she, the academy professor, upheld the foundations of her sister's dream without applause. Renata began to question herself. Does unconditional love mean never being recognized? One night, while organizing papers, she found an old diary. Inside were notes from the time she founded RR, full of hope and affection. "I'll do this for Rafaela. She deserves to study without worrying about money." The trembling handwriting showed how much this act came from the heart. She closed the notebook and hugged it, crying silently. She didn't regret it, but she wanted to be seen, even if only once.
Meanwhile, Rafaela lived without realizing the growing distance. Engrossed in her college exams, she barely noticed her sister's absence in conversations. To her, the absence was indifference, when in reality, it was pain. And that estrangement would become the stage for something much bigger, the beginning of the collapse of the comfortable lie she lived in. On Friday, Aunt Vera showed up unexpectedly at the gym. She brought coffee and empathy. "You don't deserve what happened, my daughter," she said, touching Renata's hand. "But time always reveals who is who." The words came as an unexpected comfort. Renata smiled, her eyes welling up with tears, and replied, "I don't want her to suffer. I just wanted her to know." And in that instant, destiny seemed to listen. As Aunt Vera left, Renata glanced at the gym's bulletin board, where she had discreetly hung a childhood photo of the two sisters. For a moment, she considered taking it down, but she couldn't. Despite the hurt, there was still love. And perhaps it was this love, silent and stubborn, that would soon change everything. That night, she received an automated email from the Foundation's press office with a new scholarship request, ironically from one of Rafaela's colleagues. She smiled slightly. "The world is too small to hide the truth forever," she murmured. And indeed, the world was beginning to tighten the noose around the secret that sustained them both. Saturday dawned with the insistent sound of notifications on her cell phone. Renata opened her eyes and saw dozens of messages. Her heart raced even before she understood why. Among the notifications, one caught her attention. RR Foundation featured on National Portal, helping to train future doctors and athletes. She froze. For a moment, it seemed as if she couldn't breathe. Her anonymity, that shield she had maintained for years, was beginning to crumble. She opened the link with trembling hands. The article was positive, full of praise. It talked about an anonymous young entrepreneur who helped underprivileged students. It even mentioned the name of one of the scholarships she had awarded, Project Hope, National Faculty of Medicine. The same course as her sister. And in the final part, a sentence that made her break out in a cold sweat. Sources claim that the foundation was created by a sports professional known in the fitness world as Renata Ribeiro. The name was enough to start the chaos. The family group chat exploded with messages. "Renata, is that you? Girl, why didn't you tell me? Is this serious? Rafaela, what is this foundation thing? Why are they saying you fund medical scholarships? Is this some kind of joke?" Renata's breathing quickened. The secret she had so carefully protected was now exposed. It took her hours to reply. When she did, she simply sent, "That's true." The group fell silent. Minutes later, the question she dreaded came. "Including my scholarship, Renata?" It was Rafaela. The personal trainer's heart raced. She looked at the screen, torn between guilt and relief. And then she typed, "Yes, Rafa." Since the first semester, she pressed send, and the world seemed to stop.
On the other side, Rafaela felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. Her vanity crumbled in seconds. All the words she had spoken, the jokes, the pride, the laughter, everything turned to ashes inside her. She cried alone in the middle of her room, feeling for the first time the weight of true shame. She was no longer the genius of the family, but rather the distorted reflection of a sister she had never valued. Meanwhile, Renata tuned off her cell phone and went for a walk. The cold morning wind cut her face, but it also brought a new kind of lightness, that of someone who no longer needed to hide anything. For the first time, she didn't feel smaller, just tired and free. She didn't yet know what was to come, but she sensed that this would be the beginning of a long catharsis. Hours later, the story went viral. Comments were divided between admiration and disdain. Some praised the generous gesture, others questioned why she kept it a secret. But for Renata, none of that mattered. What mattered was the silence that would follow, the silence that precedes the shock of an entire family. And above all, the sister's silence, because now one's pride would be the other's shame. Rafaela spent the entire morning locked in a room, her eyes fixed on the ceiling and her heart in turmoil. The news about the foundation echoed through all the groups, and the name Renata Ribeiro was now synonymous with generosity and success. The irony tore her apart. How hadn't she realized it before? How many times had she mocked her sister without imagining that it was she who financed every book, every lab coat, every step of her brilliant career? Shame came in waves, accompanied by a suffocating emptiness. She opened her laptop and logged into the university portal. In the system, she confirmed the information. Sponsor, RR Foundation. The official document was there, cold and unquestionable. Rafaela ran her finger across the screen as if she could erase the letters. "No, it can't be," she murmured. The memories began to mingle. The new lab coat, the expensive tablet, the paid internship. Everything had Renata's invisible touch. Each memory now became an open wound. She stood up, unsteady, and looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time, she didn't recognize herself. The face identical to her sister's seemed to mock her, reflecting the truth she had so desperately avoided. The mirror never lied. She simply chose to see only a part of it. Tears streamed freely, and with them her pride crumbled. "How could I have laughed at her?" she whispered between sobs. "How could I have been so blind?" The phone vibrated incessantly. Messages from her mother, father, uncles, and colleagues. Everyone wanted to understand. Everyone had an opinion.
Your sister is an example. She should have told us. You should be grateful." The words mingled until they became noise. Rafaela threw her cell phone on the bed and curled up on the floor. For the first time, she had no answer for anything, and the silence that once was arrogance became an unbearable weight.
Meanwhile, Renata tried to go about her day normally. She attended to customers, corrected postures, and laughed automatically. But inside, she trembled. She knew the confrontation was inevitable. Rafaela would never let the matter drop. And although part of her wished she never had to hear her sister's name again, another part longed for something she never had, to be heard. Perhaps this time it would be possible. Late in the afternoon, she received a short message. "Dinner at my parents' house. Today. I need to understand everything." It was Rafaela's. Renata took a few minutes to respond. She knew that dinner wouldn't be a conversation. It would be a trial. Still, she replied, "I'll be there." She took a deep breath, looked in the mirror, and said to herself, "The time has come." The hours leading up to dinner were a mixture of nervousness and liberation. For the first time, Renata chose an elegant outfit, not out of vanity, but out of self-respect. Her body, so accustomed to bending down to help others, now stood tall in self-defense. The drive to her parents' house seemed longer than ever. On the other side, Rafaela rehearsed what she would say. "I just want to understand," she repeated to herself, trying to appear calm. But what she really wanted was to absolve herself. She wanted to believe there was an explanation that would make the image of her sister, who had sustained her glory, less painful. She wanted, somehow, to continue being the best, even knowing she wasn't. When the two women saw each other at the front door, time seemed to stand still. They had the same face, but opposite looks. One filled with guilt, the other with weariness. And without needing words, they both knew that night would change everything. The dinner would be the mirror where love and pride would finally clash. The table was elegantly set, but the atmosphere was tense. The parents, confused, tried to disguise their discomfort with banal comments. Aunt Vera watched in silence, knowing that nothing could ease what was about to happen. Rafaela and Renata sat facing each other, inverted mirrors, separated by a white tablecloth and years of accumulated silence. The air seemed too heavy to breathe. "So it's true?" Rafaela asked, her voice low, almost trembling. "You created that foundation and paid for my college?" Renata nodded without looking away. Her father's eyes widened. Her mother put her hand to her mouth. The silence stretched out thick until Rafaela continued, "Why? Why didn't you tell me?" The question came out more as a plea than an accusation. Renata took a deep breath before answering. "Because I knew you wouldn't accept it. You'd be too proud to accept help from me. And because I just wanted you to have what I never had, support." The words hung in the air, full of pain and truth. Rafaela swallowed hard. "But you made me look like an idiot," she retorted. "I bragged about a bag that wasn't even mine." Her voice rose, a mixture of shame and anger.
"No, Rafaela, the bag was yours. I only paid the price the world demanded of you to be admired." Renata's answer came calmly but sharply. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. Her father, silent, lowered his head. The room seemed to shrink under the weight of the truth spoken. Rafaela felt her chest burn. For the first time, she realized that the pride she had always displayed had been sustained by the love she despised. "You should have let me learn the hard way," Rafaela shouted, standing up. "Maybe I would have learned sooner." Renata replied firmly, "I didn't know how to stop loving you, even when you hurt me." The sentence landed like a punch in the air. Aunt Vera discreetly wiped away her tears. The mother began to sob. The father, motionless, only whispered, "Daughters, what have we done to you?" Dinner ended in silence. No one ate. Raffaella left before breakfast, her face swollen from crying. Renata remained there for a few minutes, staring at her empty plate, feeling both relief and sadness. The truth set her free, but it also left deep scars. When she stood up, she hugged her parents and said, "I don't want excuses. I just want peace." That night, the two sisters slept without exchanging messages. But for the first time in years, the mirror between them didn't reflect rivalry. It reflected humanity. The confrontation had destroyed pride, but opened space for the beginning of healing. Raffaella woke up with a swollen face and a heavy heart. The room, which had once been a symbol of achievement, now felt like a cell of guilt. Every book, every photo, every trophy reminded her of how much her success had been built upon her sister's silent sacrifice. She tried to return to her routine, but messages from colleagues, articles praising Renata, and the silence of her family suffocated her. For the first time, she didn't want to be seen. At the hospital, stares followed her. A colleague approached, smiling uncomfortably. "You're lucky to have such a generous sister, huh?" The phrase, though sincere, hurt more than any insult. Raffaella forced a smile and replied, "Yes, very lucky." Inside, shame burned. The pride that once motivated her was now a weight that prevented her from breathing. That night, she tried to call Renata, but gave up before hearing the ring. What would she say? "Thank you for paying for everything I boasted about achieving on my own?" The words seemed too ridiculous. She sent a short message. "Sorry." The status showed "seen," but there was no reply. It was fair. She deserved the silence she had previously imposed. Meanwhile, Renata read the message alone in her apartment. She didn't reply immediately, not out of revenge, but out of exhaustion. She had spent days reliving the dinner in her head, every word, every look. Despite the pain, she finally felt free. Her family now knew the truth, and with it came the discomfort of a collective conscience. Her parents started calling her more often, perhaps out of guilt. She answered, but without enthusiasm.
The outside world began to treat Renata like a heroine. Interviews, invitations, news reports. The fame she never sought was now knocking at her door. And, ironically, the more she was praised by others, the more she missed her sister. Public glory didn't heal the emotional void of years. It was as if, even under the spotlight, she still lived in the shadows of an incomplete love. Raffaella, on the other hand, collapsed. She skipped classes, refused invitations, and deleted her social media accounts. Her parents tried to comfort her, but she refused any help. "I deserve to feel this," she said. Her arrogance had turned into penance. She began volunteering at the hospital, caring for needy patients, perhaps in an unconscious attempt to atone for her own selfishness. One night, at the end of a shift, she sat on the emergency stairs and cried until her body ached. A nurse approached and asked if she was all right. She simply replied, "Am trying to be someone my sister would respect." It was the first time she had said something without putting herself at the center of the situation. The emptiness still existed, but it was beginning to be filled with humility. Renata learned through her Aunt Vera that Raffaella was different. "She's been quiet, daughter. I think she's learning." The news brought relief and sadness at the same time. Renata wanted to believe the change was real, but she was afraid of getting hurt again. The love between sisters is like an elastic band. It stretches, it hurts,
but it rarely breaks. In the following days, Renata decided to take a symbolic step. He sent a request to the Foundation's board to change the name of the main project, Ribeiro Sisters Scholarship. He didn't ask for permission. He simply did it. It was a gesture of silent reconciliation, the kind of forgiveness that isn't spoken, but built. And for the first time, he felt that, perhaps, the pain had been worth it. Time passed slowly in the following weeks. Rafaela maintained her volunteer routine, but still avoided her family's gaze. In each patient she helped, she saw a chance to redeem herself. Sometimes she thought about visiting Renata, but the fear of being rejected paralyzed her. Her pride still hurt, not the pride shown by others, but her own, wounded and shattered. It was strange, learning to be humble. Renata, in turn, immersed herself in the Foundation's work. The demand for scholarships increased after the report, and she decided to expand the projects. But amidst the success, something bothered her. Every time she saw the program's new name, Ribeiro Sisters, she felt a tightness in her chest. It was as if the mirror were still cracked, reflecting disconnected pieces of love and pain.
One Saturday morning, the two met by chance. It was at the neighborhood market, amidst shelves of fruit and hesitant glances. Rafaela, in a crumpled lab coat, held a shopping bag. Renata, in sportswear, pushed a cart. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Neither of them knew what to say. The dense silence conveyed everything that words couldn't. Rafaela was the first to speak. "Hi." Her voice was low, almost a whisper. Renata replied calmly, "Hi." They stood there, staring at each other, the same face, two opposing stories, until Rafaela took a deep breath and said, "I saw the Foundation's new name." Renata nodded. "It's the least I could do," she added. And then Rafaela smiled, her eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you for everything, even when I didn't deserve it." The conversation was brief, but transformative. Renata didn't respond with words. She simply extended her hand, and Rafaela took it. It was the most sincere touch they had exchanged in years, without masks, without comparisons, without spectators. Forgiveness was beginning to blossom, timid but real. The crack in the mirror was beginning to heal. After the meeting, both spent the day in silence, but something had changed. Rafaela returned to studying diligently, no longer to prove anything to anyone, but to be worthy of the opportunity she had been given. Renata, on the other hand, realized that she no longer needed to hide who she was. The weight of invisibility was gradually dissipating. That evening, Renata received a short message. "One day I want to work at your foundation, if you'll let me." It was Rafaela's. She smiled, moved, and replied, "It will be an honor, sis." And in that instant, the mirror between them finally reflected something whole, a reflection that, despite the cracks, now showed true love. The next day, during a workout, Renata realized her body felt light. It wasn't sweat or fatigue, it was her soul. The pain had served its purpose, to teach her that loving isn't about being silent, and forgiving isn't about forgetting, but about choosing to move forward. The mirror was broken, yes, but sometimes the broken pieces reflect the light even more beautifully. And in the case of the Ribeiro twins, that light would shine again, together. Time passed, but the wound left scars that, little by little, began to transform into lessons. Months after the encounter at the market, Rafaela mustered the courage to go to the gym where Renata worked. The sound of weights clattering and rhythmic music echoed through the room. She entered slowly, as if treading on sacred ground. Renata, with her back turned, was guiding a client,
unaware of her sister's presence. When she turned around, their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Rafaela's face, tired and sincere, carried the humility that had been lacking before. "I needed to come," she said, her voice choked with emotion. Renata excused herself from the students and walked towards her, unhurriedly, as if facing a vivid memory.
"You didn't need to come here for this," Renata replied softly. Rafaela shook her head. "Yes, I did. I needed to lose everything, pride and genuine." The gym staff stopped discreetly. Some moved. Two identical sisters, who had spent their lives trying to differentiate themselves, were now reunited, not by blood, but by empathy. Renata cried without shame. Rafaela sobbed, repeating softly, "Forgive me, forgive me." And forgiveness, at last, was accepted. After the reunion, they sat down at a nearby cafe. Rafaela talked about her volunteer work, about the patients who taught her more than any teacher. She also spoke of the guilt she still felt, and how she dreamed of doing something to honor her sister's name. Renata listened attentively, without interrupting. "Guilt doesn't heal, Rafa, but love transforms. We just need to use what we've learned." The conversation was light, without accusations. For the first time, they were on the same level. Two women who had made mistakes, suffered, and matured. Rafaela spoke about the idea of working at the foundation, and Renata smiled. "You've been a part of it from the beginning. You just didn't know it." That's when Rafaela had an idea that would change everything. "So, why don't we do something together? A new beginning with both our names, no secrets." Renata hesitated for a second, but the gleam in her sister's eyes was genuine. "A project of ours?" she asked. Rafaela nodded. "Yes, an institute that unites medicine and sport, body and mind, like the two of us." The words resonated powerfully. The concept was perfect, transforming the pain of separation into shared strength. Renata felt a lump in her throat. Let's make it happen. In the following days, the plans began. Meetings, documents, program ideas. For the first time, they worked side by side, and the connection was natural, almost magical. The past still hurt, but now it served as fuel. We destroyed ourselves out of pride, but we're rebuilding ourselves out of purpose. Renata smiled. And that purpose is bigger than us. The Hermanos Ribeiro Institute began to take shape. An unlikely union of medicine and physical education focused on holistic health, with scholarships and community programs. News spread quickly, and this time, both disciplines were praised together. For the first time, the accolades were shared. The mirror between them no longer reflected rivalry, but partnership. Finally, the two halves recognized each other as a whole. The inauguration of the Hermanos Ribeiro Institute was marked by a sunny morning. Journalists, students, and former beneficiaries of the foundation attended. A banner with a photo of the two smiling together decorated the entrance. Renata wore a simple dress. Rafaela, elegant sportswear. Neither tried to outshine the other. They were balanced, like mirrors aligned for the first time.
Rafaela gave the opening speech. With a firm voice, she began, "For a long time, I lived believing that success was something you achieve alone. Today, I understand that true success is recognizing those who walked with us, even when we didn't want to see them."
Her words moved the audience. Renata watched in silence, with discreet tears in her eyes. When it was her turn to speak, Renata was direct. "I founded this idea out of love, but I hid that love for fear of not being accepted. Today I learned that the truth sets you free, and that my sister has always been my greatest inspiration, even when she made me cry." People stood up to applaud. Rafaela hugged her on stage, and the moment made headlines. Twin sisters transform rivalry into hope. After the event, they walked together through the Institute's garden. "Do you think time erases everything?" Rafaela asked. Renata thought for a moment. "No, time doesn't erase, it transforms pain into history. And a good story is one that we choose to rewrite." Rafaela smiled, holding her sister's hand. "Then let's keep writing." The project grew rapidly. Medical students and athletes began working side by side in underprivileged communities. The institute became a national benchmark. The two appeared on TV programs, but without the vanity of the past. Now the glory had a purpose. Each achievement was shared, and each obstacle faced in partnership. The parents, overcome with emotion, attended the inauguration. The mother cried upon seeing her daughters embracing. "I should have seen this sooner," she said. Renata replied tenderly, "Now we just need to look ahead." And that's what they did. The family, previously divided by expectations, rediscovered harmony in the simplicity of their unity. That night, alone in the Institute's office, the twins looked at a large mirror on the wall. "Remember when this reflection hurt?" Rafaela asked. Renata nodded. "Now it heals." The two smiled side by side, reflected as one image, two stories, one heart. The reflection, once cracked by envy and silence, now returned something new, peace. And for the first time, they both saw each other exactly as they had always been, the same, but complete. Time passed, and the Ribeiro Sisters Institute flourished as a symbol of overcoming adversity and love. A year after its inauguration, the sisters were a reference throughout the country, not only for the project, but for the story that inspired it. News reports, lectures, and international invitations multiplied. But for them, the greatest achievement was not in the spotlight. It was the simple fact of being able to look at each other and recognize each other without pain.
Rafaela was now a fully qualified doctor. Instead of seeking status, she dedicated herself to humanized medicine, providing free consultations in the Institute's projects. Renata, who previously avoided any form of exposure, learned to speak publicly, and her lectures on empathy and self-esteem filled auditoriums. The contrast that once separated them had transformed into a complement, body and mind, side by side. On the Institute's anniversary, the two decided to do something different. They invited their parents to a small, private event, without cameras. "We want to celebrate as a family," explained Renata. The father, moved, arrived with flowers. The mother, crying even before entering, hugged her daughters for a long time. "You taught me what true love is. Forgiveness and pride all together," she said, her voice breaking. During dinner, the atmosphere was light. Laughter filled the space where there had previously been silence and competition. Rafaela served the wine, Renata told funny stories about the students. At one point, their father commented, "You know, I always thought pride came from achievements. Today, I see that it comes from courage, and you two had plenty of that." The sisters looked at each other, knowingly. For the first time, the praise was for both of them. After dinner, they walked to the Institute's courtyard, illuminated by small lights. A new plaque was being installed. Renata and Rafaela Ribeiro Training Center, Inspiring Lives. Rafaela ran her fingers over the name and smiled. "Do you still think I owe you anything?" she asked. Renata shook her head. "We don't owe each other anything. We returned the favor." The sentence hung in the air, light and profound. That night, the wind blew gently, and the moon illuminated the garden.
The two sat on a bench, watching the students training and studying under the same roof, something they never imagined possible when they lived trapped by ego and pain. "Look, sis," said Renata, pointing to a group of young doctors and athletes working together. "They have no idea what we went through for this to exist." Rafaela replied, "And it's better this way. Let them see what love builds, not what it had to heal." Days later, a TV program aired a special report about the institute. The images showed Rafaela attending to patients and Renata guiding students. At the end, the reporter asked, "What would you say to each other after everything you've been through?" Rafaela looked at the camera with a calm smile. "Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." Renata added, "And thank you for finally seeing me." The story moved the country. On social media, thousands of messages flooded the Institute's pages. People shared stories of reconciliation, of estranged siblings who came together again, of families inspired to forgive each other. The twins' legacy had become bigger than themselves, a living reminder that love, when it matures, heals even the deepest wounds. One afternoon, after everyone had left, Renata and Rafaela were alone in the main hall. In the center, there was a large new mirror donated by students. The two approached and looked at their reflection side by side. "Funny," said Rafaela. "Now when I see myself, I don't know where I end and you begin." Renata laughed softly. "Maybe because deep down, we were always one. We just needed to remember that."
The reflection showed two identical women, but completely transformed. There was no more envy, no hierarchy, only complicity, love, and respect. Renata placed her hand on her sister's shoulder and said, "You are my greatest lesson." Rafaela replied, "And you are my greatest mirror." Those words sealed the cycle that destiny had begun years before. As they left, the sun was setting behind the building bearing their name. The golden light reflected in the mirror and projected on the wall the silhouettes of two sisters walking together. The past at last rested, and the Ribeiro family's new pride was no longer made of achievements, it was made of love. Life sometimes teaches us through pain, but it always rewards those who truly love. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt forgotten, wronged, or needed to forgive someone, subscribe to the channel now. Because the following stories will prove to you that even the most invisible heart can shine when it is moved by love.